Now in this video, we will be going over a major key factor that makes up at least 50% of your YouTube video success. This key factor is called click-through rate. Now click-through rate, in the most basic and easy way to understand, it is based around the thumbnail, title, and topic relevancy. The click-through rate definition is based around how many people will see the thumbnail and title, and of those people who see it, how many of those people click on it. An example being, let's say 100 people see the video recommended to them, and of those 100 people, only 10 people click on that video. Now this means you have a 10% click-through rate. Now when we take a step back and ask ourselves what click-through rate percentage is best, that is a very complicated question and there's no exact number. But by rule of thumb, the goal is to always make sure that you get a higher CTR percentage and you try to get it as high as possible. Ideally, the goal is the more percentage of CTR you get, the better it is. For the longest time on YouTube before 2018, everyone said that the audience retention and engagement with the video was better than the CTR. Now back before 2018, no one truly understood the definition of CTR for YouTube, as YouTube never really rolled out the ability to study your YouTube video CTR like they do now. However, back in 2016, when I started to take YouTube seriously, I would later learn what CTR was before many even knew about it. I would get into calls with massive YouTubers who at the time started to gain slow momentum. Now one of those YouTubers in my circle was a YouTuber by the name of Mr. Beast. Now the thing about Mr. Beast in our group was that we would study YouTube very carefully and quickly and learn that click-through rate was massively important. It's way more important compared to the audience retention, but don't get me wrong, both are required to go viral. But when you look at it from what part is the most important, we found CTR is very important. Now Mr. Beast then took this knowledge and in mid-2017 went mega viral, applying the tactics we learned. He then started to do crazy videos that would grab the viewer's attention before they even clicked on the video, which is one of the main reasons why he went viral so fast. Now as I'm filming this video, Mr. Beast has over 30 million subscribers in 2020, but when I met him in 2016, he only had 800k subscribers. So that kind of gives you a good idea of how important CTR is, because Mr. Beast prioritized that. Now most YouTubers are starting to realize this trend and how important CTR really is. So in this video, I'll dive into some tips I've accumulated over time working with high achieving YouTube stars and personalities with over 10 million subscribers and my own YouTube channels when it comes down to increasing your click-through rate to go viral. Tip number 1, copy what works. A big tip is to learn to study what your niche's audience reacts to the most. Every niche is different on how the audience responds to certain thumbnail formats or ideas. So one of the major tips I have is to study channels that are in the same niche as you and look at how those channels format and style their thumbnails and find similarities between these channels. Then try it out yourself. Learning to take what works from someone else and make it better is a key in the space of YouTube. If the audience shows interest in a certain thing, most likely if you come out with the same thing but made it better, then your chances of going viral on that video is 10 times bigger. Tip number 2, use colors red, green, and yellow. Now based on the research and testing I've done, I've found that using these colors, red, green, and yellow, seems to actually perform decently well. The reason being is if you think about it, psychology-wise, people who drive cars are usually used to seeing those main colors. You usually see red, green, and yellow at stoplight. And so their brain is wired and triggered to notice those bright colors as almost like a safety mechanism. So if you tap into that psychology and use those colors, then chances are you'll grab attention. But I will say don't overdo it. Tip number 3, 2 or 3 faces works. I've noticed that using 2 or 3 faces in a thumbnail seems to perform better than just one. The reason being is that our brains is wired to look at who's looking at us when we walk into a room. So the more faces, the more our brain is wired and triggered to notice who's looking at us. Tip number 4, use strong emotion. When creating thumbnails, you want to make sure you have your face making strong emotions. Strong emotions can excite or entice your viewers to click on the video, and those thumbnails seem to perform much more. Now this can be applied for titles. Having your titles reflect and add onto what is happening in the thumbnail is gold. So learning to use your titles as an addition to the thumbnails and not repeating can help too. Tip number 5, create information gap. When making your titles and thumbnails, make sure you try to make the viewer ask themselves one of these questions when they see your video recommended to them. How did he do that? How do I get that? What's going on there? What happens next? Why is he making that face? face. Doing this is a key as it sparks curiosity in the viewer, and that is the goal. You want them to be curious and interested in clicking on the video to find out more. Tip number 6, make the thumbnail clear. Too many people create thumbnails that is hard to look at and understand what the video is about. One thing I've learned is that if you can style your thumbnail in a certain way, then show it to a friend and tell that friend to look at the thumbnail and guess what the title/topic of the video is. And if your friend ends up guessing correctly on what the title is, then that means you did a good job at making the thumbnail easy to understand what the video is about. Too many people make thumbnails that no one understands what is going on in it, and so that makes the viewer move on to another video to click on. Tip number 7, don't clutter. A lot of people try to fit everything into their thumbnail, and all they do is clutter the thumbnail and make people not want to click on it. The goal is to make the thumbnail clean, straight to the point of the video. You don't want to have several things all happening at once in the thumbnail. Goal is for people's eyes to look directly into the center of the thumbnail at one key element or thing happening. If you have too much happening in the thumbnail, people's eyes won't know what to focus on, and so they end up actually ignoring your thumbnail altogether and look at another video's thumbnail to click on. Tip number 8, the versus format. A huge tip that helped me a ton with my videos is creating a versus format in the thumbnail. Now, a versus format is where you have almost a before and after layout in the thumbnail. Now, this could be an actual before and after video, or it could be an actual versus thumbnail. And I'll share some examples on the screen. Just in general, what I've learned is that putting a split section in the thumbnail can actually grab the viewer's eye. Mentally, this makes people think that there's some type of challenge video or some type of exciting experiment to watch. Tip number 9, use arrows and circles. Now, with this tip, I don't recommend using it in every video, but for some niches, this works a ton. If you are into conspiracy or horror-based niches, having arrows and circles can actually grab and bring the viewer in on your thumbnails a ton. But not just in those niches, but even random niches, people have found good ways to use arrows and circles to really hook the viewer in. So trying those elements could actually help you a ton. Tip number 10, text in thumbnails. When you create thumbnails that happen to use text, I recommend not using more than 3 words of text. And also, if your audience happens to be mainly kids, I wouldn't use text at all, because usually kids just can't read or handle reading. Now, when I do use text in thumbnails, it is usually in addition to the title, not a repeat of the title. Look at the thumbnails as if they are real estate. The title and thumbnail both are real estate that you need to take advantage of. If you repeat yourself twice in the title of the thumbnail, that won't help your case much, and you're using up free real estate that you could be used to add on to your title or thumbnail, not repeating it. But those are my tips for click-through rate. Make sure you watch the other section in this course showing you my step-by-step thought process and work that I go into going on and making thumbnails. That section is called the workshop thumbnail section, so go ahead and make sure you check that out on this course. There will be a lot more CTR tips in that one as well. So I'll go ahead and see you guys in the next video.